Let's welcome back on the show racing great, motorsports Hall of Famer, Hurley Haywood. Hurley, so good to get some more time with you today. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. We're
So
getting dried out here in Florida.
Yeah, we
really
just went through
weather.
some crazy rain here. Hope you're safe over there.
So Hurley, it just so happens by coincidence that right now I believe the 24 Hours of Le Mans is going on. Do you still watch that race intently? And what are as somebody who has gone through it and been successful in it, what are your feelings as you do watch it or you do follow it?
Well, first you're a week late, so that was last weekend.
Oh, we'll get the timing right eventually. Sorry about that. But Jeff can't tell time.
Just so you know, Google said June 15th and 16th.
Google lied to Jeff.
Yeah, no, it was last weekend. I was out in L.A. at the PEC out there, the Porsche Experience Center, doing an event for both the 75th anniversary of Porsche and Le Mans. And it was kind of gruesome to watch, but I'm sure they learned a lot. But it's, when you're watching something like that and you've been participating in that event, you know how many bad things can happen. And that was just a nightmare of really bad situations that they got themselves into, and they just couldn't recover.
Talk to us about, you said you went back and you were with Porsche. You raced your first Porsche in 1969 before you were drafted. You stayed with Porsche and raced Porsches through your career. What has it been about for you with your relationship with Porsche that has been so special?
That's the simple answer. If you want to win races on a consistent basis, you better be driving a Porsche. Porsches are so reliable. They're so well engineered. If you look at the success of Porsche over the last 50 years, there's been ups and downs. Right now, they're kind of had a down moment, but they'll recover and they'll be back in the winner's circle on a consistent basis. They won one race this year in Long Beach, so the capabilities are in the car, but they just have to get iron out some problems that they're having.
Yeah, just to clarify for everybody out there, I had the wrong year. June 15th and 16th next year. Everybody be ready because that's when the 24 Hours of Le Mans is. Sorry about that, Hurley.
Okay, so, you recovered.
There we go.
Barely. So Hurley, what exactly brought you to racing? I mean, for a lot of people, especially as kids, we love the idea of driving fast. But for most of us, we are scared to death of driving over 70 miles an hour.
Well, I was born right in the city of Chicago, right downtown. And luckily we had a bunch of farms out west of the city. And the main farm that my grandmother lived on enabled us for me to start driving a full-size car when I was 12 years old. Not with my parents' permission. Our farm foreman made some special blocks on the pedals and away I went. And so I loved driving. It was intoxicating, really. And I didn't know what the terminology for understeer was, but I knew if I went into a corner too fast, I wasn't going to get the car to turn and crash into the woods. So it was, and I had an opportunity to drive on all kinds of roads, from pavement to dirt to gravel and to no roads. So by the time I got my license at 16, I was pretty good driver. The racing part of it never really came into effect until I went down to college in Florida. I had a really fast Corvette, and I used to race that in the local autocrosses. And one weekend I met Peter Gregg, and as they say, the rest is history. He saw some talent, and he helped me order my first race car. I was a business administration major in college, and I made a really great proposal to my father, and he was so impressed with the proposal that he said, okay, I'll help you for 2 years. And after 2 years are up, you have to either stop racing or continue. You can't, and I'm not going to give you any more money, but you have to continue on, and you can't go down a level. You have to remain at the same level or higher. So it all kind of worked out. It's a matter of being in the right place at the right time for so many things in life.
So the moral of the story for me is that I should have gotten a Corvette when I was a kid, as opposed to the Mercury Monarch that I got.
That would have helped. That would have
I
helped.
still don't think you'd have been comfortable at that speed. You said that I saw a quote. 52 years ago, you started racing. You said, "To be truthful, I think endurance racing chose me." We talk all this time regularly on the show about team sports, and people often think of racing as just the driver in the car. Can you talk about the team aspect of endurance racing
And racing in general?
I mean that's such an important part of the overall success of a team. And the team is really a team. It's you have a driver. The driver is the one that usually gets all the accolades and pats on the back, but it's the crew that stands behind him that really makes it happen. If you have a crew that's not doing their homework and not getting the car set up, then the driver just is not going to go anywhere. So you have to have all those things lined up working perfectly for the driver to be successful. And I've been really lucky in my whole entire career to have a great team behind me. Brumos was basically the main team behind me for all these years. They've always been there. I've driven for other teams, but I always, my home was at Brumos. I was, part of the dealership network and part of the management team there, and it all kind of just worked together and made, at some point you're going to have to or you're going to have to retire from racing. And I was lucky enough to build that bridge that when I did finally stop racing, I transferred over to the business side of the equation, and that's worked out well for me.
Your story and your route to being a successful driver took a turn, a detour, by having to go to Vietnam. You've told the story, and we've read your book about how you had your commanding officer actually at one of your races. Can you tell us that story?
Well, the Vietnam experience was something that I think really helped me have the discipline that I needed to have when I came back and went racing with full time with Peter Gregg. And Peter was also a naval officer, and he understood the importance of details of doing your homework and being prepared for the onslaught. And that's what the military taught me: how to take command, how to obey orders, how to be timely, and how to listen to your orders and fulfill them. As far as the Army went, when I came back to the States, I was rotating out of the military in Fort Lee, Virginia, and I happened to get a weekend off, and the weekend coincided with the race that they had at VIR, Virginia International Raceway, which Peter and I had discussed in doing. So I said, okay, I'm cleared to go. So I went down to the race, won the race, was in the base newspaper the next day, and the commanding officer was a big racing fan, and he was actually at the race, watched the race. He had, no idea that I was a soldier at his base. The next day, I got a command to go see the commanding officer. I said, "Oh God, I'm in trouble now." But he said, "I watched you, and we've got to, get you out of the military. We won't stand in your way." And away I went. Never looked back.
and the success that you end up having. I mean, winning Le Mans, winning 24 Hours at Daytona, racing in the Indy 500. I know you couldn't have ever anticipated it, but the career after you had there, you get to retire in 2012, and you move into this position in charge of driver development. Can you talk about how different that perspective was, getting to be with the fans, but actually getting to work with the younger drivers and pass on what you had learned so many years in the car?
Yeah, that's an important equation because you're going to have to, any manufacturer is going to have to rely on the younger generation coming up. And that's what's happening now. There's a lot of new faces in racing, very, very talented guys. But you have to sort of tame your enthusiasm to work to your benefit, not to your disadvantage. And if you don't have the right frame of mind on how you evaluate something, I've always said that racing is a lot like chess. You have to really plan your moves. So the move you're making at the moment might not make any sense to somebody, but down the line, it suddenly makes sense. Just the same as playing chess. So you have to think, and the guys that have the ability to think and to adapt to all the changes that are going on. You're given the car as perfect as humanly possible at the beginning of the race, but the minute it starts to roll, its performance goes downhill, and you have to adapt to it. You have so many different track conditions, different drivers. A 24-hour race, you've got, probably 50 cars. Each car has a minimum of 3 drivers. So you got a lot of guys that you don't have any idea what their driving is like. So it's how you look at a situation and evaluate very quickly the successes of the percentage of probability of getting by that car without damaging your car.
So you go from mentoring drivers to, in 2018, taking a more even public position with the release of your autobiography, Hurley from the Beginning. And, Jeff and I were joking with you earlier about the fear we would have of driving over 70 miles an hour. You didn't mind driving 200 miles an hour. You were more concerned of being found out that you were living as a gay man. What would your sponsors do? What would your fans do? You were sponsored by Penthouse. Can you talk to us about the challenge that you had trying to race while also keep this secret that you were so concerned might cost you?
Yeah, it was not something that was easy to do. I was very mindful of separating my personal life from my business life. A lot of people in the racing industry knew what my story was, but as long as I could keep my foot down longer than the guy next door to me, nobody really said too much. And I was, outside of the race car, I was a very decent person. People, liked being around me. So I never really had a big problem with people finding out that I was gay. I mean, I could count on one hand the number of people that had a problem with that. But the thing that sort of moved me to make it more public was in the book and in the documentary about the guy that came to my office. And, he got about halfway through the interview, he kind of stopped dead and said, "I need your advice on something." He said, "Every morning I wake up and I think I want to commit suicide. Nobody understands me. I can't talk to anybody. I'm gay and I just don't know what to do. It's overwhelming." And I said, let's slow down and let's talk about this. I gave him a couple, people and institutions to talk to. And then I never heard from him. He left my office with a really good attitude, and he went off, and I never heard from him again. And then about 2 years later, I get a call, which turns out to be his mother. And I go, "Oh God, she's going to tell me, he's committed suicide or something." But she said, "Whatever you told my son saved his life." And, that was kind of a big wake up call for me. That I said, if my voice is strong enough to save a life, one life, maybe I could save 2 lives or 100 lives. And so you've got to talk about these things. And sometimes, kids are just overwhelmed with so much going on in the world today that they need, positive things to look at, positive things to say, well, maybe if he can do it, maybe I can do it. And so I think, and as far as people not understanding or losing fans by that. I think really that it was an accelerator. I think so many people came up to me and said, you were very brave to do that. I've always loved you as a driver. Now I love you as a person. And so that's something positive.
Yeah, and the positivity continues even to this day, not just with you being an example there, but also giving back through the event. And one of the reasons we wanted to have you on is that you're going to be at an event next weekend that Coach Vermeil is also hosting, the Concours d'Elegance. Can you tell us a little bit about that event and what that means to you to be able to participate to help youth who are going through struggles as far as illnesses?
Well, this is going to be the sixth time that the Philadelphia Concourse has been held at the Simeon. And Fred Simeon was a huge supporter. And his museum is really something very special. Even if you don't like cars, people should go there and look at the history of really cars, of automobiles. I think Fred's got cars that were built in the late 1800s all the way to current cars. And when a student or a person can look at that and say, wow, that's really something, and that I think is really a cool deal. We've got Preston Kelly, who's a very a stout and well-known journalist. There's Woody Woodward, who was the crew chief for Roger Penske when I was racing in the Can-Am in 1973. And Woody is a great guy, understands that whole job of being the crew chief and being the one that's in charge of the cars that Mark Donohue was driving. And Mark kind of felt sympathy for me and helped me get my head around driving a 917 against the world's best drivers. So that's going to be interesting to listen to him on the panel. And then, of course, Jack Atkinson is going to be there. Alan Springer and myself are on a video thing. I'm not quite sure if Jack's going to be on the video or there in person, but he's a really cool guy to get to know and to understand. He is a real an engineer and somebody that really understands the dynamics that are going on in a car. And of course, I was at this program out in LA with Alan Springer, and Alan Springer really is the glue that held everything together for the Porsche participants from the mid 70s all the way to current. He's very knowledgeable. He understands how to deal with sanctioning bodies, which is a very important aspect, and he has a real strong link to the factory. So if he tells the Porsche factory something that they should do, they listen very closely to that. So that's a huge asset for them. I think that panel of discussion is going to be something that's really going to be special.
Well, we can't wait to see the success that the event has again this year. And we hope that you continue to have success where people help you realize the difference you're making for them. Thank you so much for giving us the time to talk about it all.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.